So this video I'm going to cover the output files from Crystal Grower. There are detailed manual pages explaining the format of each of these files, so I'm not going to go through that in detail in this video. I'm just going to give a general overview of each file and how you can use it effectively. So the most obvious file, which I haven't shown here, is the Xyz file, which contains the coordinates of your species to display when you're visualizing your grown crystal. So depending on your settings in the user interface, it can be saved in a few different locations. It can be bundled with your other output files, or it can be stored in a separate folder, one level above in the Xyz files folder. Having them separate means if you run a batch of simulations, you can load them all into a Vito in one go, or process them all in one go with the Crystal Grower visualizer. So you can either open this file in a Vito or in the Crystal Grower visualizer, depending on which one you want to use. If we go back to these text files, so the three most useful files that you might want to look at here that you need to know about would be the simulation parameters file here. This file contains all the information that's gone into your simulation, so the Crystal Grower code version, the structure file you used, the energies you used in your net.txt file, along with any other parameters that you've input in the Crystal Grower user interface. So this is really useful for record keeping, so if you go back to a simulation, you know exactly what you did to get the crystal morphology that you see. Another file that you'd want to be aware of is the count file. So this tells you the population of all your different site types in your system, what species they correspond to, the energies in kcal per mole for each of these sites, and the coordinations at these positions. So this says that this site here at minus 8.75 kcal per mole has one interaction of type 1, two interactions of type 2, two interactions of type 3, one interaction of type 4, and one interaction of type 5. And this is the empty site, so it hasn't been grown yet. So these are the sites that are going to be crucial for poisoning or adding growth modifiers to. You've also got the population of your sites in this column here. This tells you the population of each site type at the final crystal output, and knowing the site number allows you to pick them for poisoning later on. The other file which is useful would be the del mu file, so this tells you your delta mu for your whole system. The leftmost column is a description of time in the simulation, then you've got your overall supersaturation or delta mu, and then it's split between your components. So I'm looking at barite here. One will be sulfate and one will be barium. And this is dependent on your structure file and whether you've chosen to group your molecules together. You can read this into a graphing software like Excel and plot it. And you can also find, if you scroll down to the bottom, say you were running a system which was going to equilibrium, you'd be able to find out where your equilibrium point lies in kcal per mole towards the end. So those are the most useful files. There are a few other ones you might want to look at as well. The facets all and facets found files are used in the user interface to color your crystal. So you can read these in and edit these directly in the user interface, so you don't really need to touch these, but they are saved with your simulations. The input and add input files are mostly designed to be used with the standalone version of Crystal Grower or the command prompt version of Crystal Grower. It just saves the parameters that you input in the format that Crystal Grower will read them, so you can just quickly copy and paste them and feed them into the executable version of the program. You're unlikely to need these with the graphical user interface. The same goes for the checkpoint file. So this is another file that Crystal Grower can read in to use as an input. There's a separate video which discusses checkpointing in detail. This is just another data file that Crystal Grower can read in to run a simulation. You won't need to manipulate this file at all. Another file you might want to use is the growth file. So this just tells you the number of growths that have occurred for each unit of time. So you can also plot this in Excel and look at how your crystal grows over time. It doesn't give you as much useful information as the other files. And then the final file is this .viz file here. This is solely to be used with the Crystal Grower visualizer. So this file needs to be loaded first when you use the Crystal Grower visualizer to construct the units that you're going to look at in your crystal structure, be those molecules, tiles, or spheres. A Vito doesn't need this file because it only puts spheres at the average position at the centers of each of your units, but the Crystal Grower visualizer actually builds the tiles and molecules which we actually use as units of growth for our crystal growth. So that's just a quick overview of all the file types. As I said at the beginning of the video, the format for each of these files is discussed in the manual, which is located on our website. It goes through every single one of these files in deep detail. It gives examples and general examples. So if you need to understand these files further, have a look at those pages in the manual.